Hey guys, welcome to my channel. This video is about how to draw rocks. There are many different types of rocks, and they come in all shapes and sizes. In fact, rocks are one of the only things that can be literally any shape or size. In this video, I will explain the different shapes and elements a rock can have. I will also explain the things I avoid doing when drawing a rock. After that, I will show you how to draw multiple rocks together out on a landscape. I hope this helps you in creating your own art. The first shape that makes up a rock is a curved line. Curved lines are found on rocks that have been smoothed out by the elements, like wind or water. It is simply a curved line that connects to a different part of the rock or extends all the way around in a loop to create a closed shape. An oval is the simplest rock shape you can make. To make an oval rock more interesting, you can make one end of your shape more narrow than the other and add varying slopes and dips. The second shape that makes up a rock is straight lines. Straight lines can be seen in molded and cut stone, like bricks and gems. They can also be found on rocks in natural areas where rocks break off from each other. Bricks and gems are examples of rocks whose edges are made solely out of straight lines. River pebbles are examples of rocks whose edges are made only out of curves. Most rocks, however, are made of both. Cracks, crevices, or indentations can be added to your rocks to add more interest and detail. You do this by drawing straight lines and curved lines within your shape. If lines ever intersect each other, avoid having them pass through each other. Also avoid having your lines continue in the same angle once they intersect. Here's the result of what happens when you don't do this. This rock has X and T shapes within it, which makes it look unnatural. An X shape is formed when your intersecting lines pass through one another. T-shapes are formed when a line continues unaffected when it hits another line. X and T-shapes should be avoided in rocks unless you intentionally want your rock to look unnatural, like something that was cut or designed by man. An example of this would be a brick wall. A brick wall is made almost completely out of T-shapes, and a cross engraved on a gravestone would be an example of an X shape being used on a rock. These shapes aren't bad, but it's good to know when to use them so you don't get frustrated when drawing. Variety is also important if you want your rocks to look natural. Cracks and indentations inside a natural rock should vary in shape, length, size, and position. You can see that the indentations in this rock are all different. Here's what it would look like if the indentations were all the same shape. Here's what it would look like if the rock indentations were all the same length. And here's what it would look like if there was no variety in position or size, the indentations all being equally spaced apart and all the sections being equal in width. All these things make the rock look more unnatural. When you draw multiple rocks out on a landscape together, you will follow the same principles. Before you start your landscape, you need to think about how much random variety you want in your picture. Random variety of shape, size, and position of your rocks will add a natural feel to your piece. A lack of variety, or variety with an obvious pattern, will make things look cut, shaped, or designed by man. If you try to make a natural-looking landscape with a bunch of rocks that are spread out and uniform like gravestones, it's never going to look right. But if a graveyard is what you're going for, then drawing rocks this way is perfectly fine. It all depends on the impression you want to make. Another thing you should think about when drawing multiple rocks together is perspective. Perspective is the way a person sees things based on where they are. For example, if a person is standing close to a rock, it will look larger than if they were to move away from it and look at it from a distance. Also, a person will see different parts of a rock based on whether they are below it or above it. If a person is above something, they will see the top surface area of the thing they are looking at and not the bottom. If a person is below something, the person will see the bottom of the thing they are looking at and not the top. The more a person is below an object, the more the person will see the underside of the shape. the more a person is above an object, the more the person will see the top side of the shape. You can tell where your viewer is by looking at your horizon line. Your horizon line is what separates the ground from the sky. It is always level with a person's eyes when they look straight forward across the landscape. A horizon line can have mountains and other things in front of it, but its true shape is usually always straight and horizontal. A person looking at a landscape is always above things that are below the horizon line and will always be below things that are above the horizon line. Your horizon line can be wherever you want. It all depends on the point of view you want your picture to have. Having a high horizon line means your viewer will be above more things in your picture. Having a low horizon line means that your viewer will be below most things in your picture. It is important to understand your point of view when drawing rocks because depending on where your rock or rocks are located in your picture, you will have to show more or less of certain faces to give the right impression of the angle you want them to be. For example, if I wanted to create a rock that is completely level and flat on top, I will need to keep in mind where my horizon line is so I can draw it correctly. Since the level part of this rock is below my horizon line, this means my viewer is above it. This means I should show the top area of the level surface. Since the level part of this rock is above my horizon line, I should not show the top surface, but should show more of the underside of the rock. The closer I move a rock towards the horizon line, the less I will see of either the top or underside. If the level part of the rock is right on the horizon line, then the top should be level and straight, showing neither the top or underside. You can see that if I were to move a level-topped rock to the opposite side of the horizon line without changing the perspective, it would begin to look slanted instead of level. Rocks can be slanted, so this is okay, but understanding what makes it look that way will help you have more knowledge and control over what you're doing. The last thing I want to talk about is what shapes your rocks can convey. I already talked about how having a pattern variety or lack of variety will cause a group of rocks to look cut, shaped, or designed by man. But what about rock shapes in nature? Can rock shapes give a certain impression of certain environments? Everything is somewhat shaped from their environment, so it makes sense that certain types of rocks would be in certain types of places. Shapes themselves are also symbolic and will give certain impressions. For example, what type of place does this rock landscape convey? These rocks are edged and jagged. They also have sharp points, and some of the rocks are also curled in like claws. This gives me the impression that this place is harsh and dangerous. Symbolism aside, rocks like this could only ever form in a harsh environment, being formed by harsh weather blowing in from all sides. Here's another example. What type of place does this rock landscape convey? This rock landscape has rocks that are very unique in shape. Since I've never seen a rock formation like this before, it gives me a sense of wonder and makes me feel like I'm somewhere not on Earth. To add to the alien or fantasy feel, I could also draw some rocks to be floating in the air. To conclude this video, I'm going to show you 3 more rock landscapes to demonstrate all the things I've talked about. This landscape is of a cave, which is essentially a hollowed out rock. I wanted this cave to have crystals in it, so I designed a few of the rocks to look specifically like this type of rock. It is important to note that different types of rocks have certain characteristics and shapes. Crystals are hardly ever smooth and round, and they tend to spike out of things like a sprouted plant. Since I wanted these rocks inside the cave to be crystals, I kept this in mind when I drew them. As for the first rule, I tried to avoid having my lines intersect in X's and T's. Most all my intersecting lines are Y-shaped, which is what you want. Here are a few places I could improve on. You can see that this shape comes together in an X, and both of these intersections are lines that are T-shaped. Don't stress about it if there are a few of these in your drawing. Sometimes this will really happen in nature. If it bothers you, you can fix these mistakes and get a more natural result. Also realize that this X and T rule does not apply to rocks intersecting on different dimensions. For example, this large front rock intersects with this ceiling rock behind it in a T shape. This is okay. You can see T's like this all over my drawing. In fact, having overlapping shapes like this is one of the things that creates dimension in a drawing. As for the second rule, this rock landscape has a lot of variety in shape, length, size, and position. This crystal has a different shape than this crystal, and this crystal clump as a whole is a different shape than this crystal clump. These crystals in this clump are all different in size, and these clumps of crystals are all different in size. The crystals in crystal clumps also have different size gaps between them. As for the third rule, I'm using perspective by making the crystals smaller around this area to give the impression that they are farther away in the distance. My horizon line is in the middle of my picture, so I drew the rocks below the horizon line to show more of the top faces of the rocks, and the rocks above to show more of the undersides. The next landscape I want to show you is the landscape that combines natural and unnatural rocks. This is a drawing of a man-made fort built inside a natural rock formation. You can see that the rocks that look man-made are the rocks that lack in random variety or variety altogether. This fort has buildings that are all rectangular in shape. The windows are all the same size, and most are equally spaced apart. The more random variety I add to a man-made structure, the more haphazard or run down it will look. The more pattern variety I add, the more artistic a man-made structure will look. A lack of variety will make a man-made structure very simple. For my last rock landscape, I'm going to talk about something I haven't covered yet. One other thing to avoid when drawing rocks are tangents. Tangents are when two or more lines interact in a way that insinuates a relationship that the artist did not intend. An example of a tangent is when the lines of two rocks that you want to be separated line up with each other. This makes them look connected or on top of each other, when in fact you want the rocks to look separated and at different dimensions. Here's an example of a rock landscape without tangents. And here's an example of a rock landscape with tangents. The rock landscape with tangents have lines that line up with each other. This causes a lot of confusion for the viewer in those areas. To make a more clear piece of art, make sure that the lines of different rocks you make stay separated or overlap each other. I hope this video helped you understand the things I think about when drawing rocks. Click the like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe and click the bell icon if you want to be notified when I post new tutorials.